Joining us to go more in depth on the troubling issue and to get reactions from both sides of the aisle, Daniel Scarpinato, National Press Secretary from the NRCC, Democrat strategist Bridget Todd, and rejoining us here on set from an earlier appearance, former CIA intelligence officer Fred Russman. To all three, we welcome you back to America's Forum. Now, to those on both sides of the aisle, last hour, Fred and Colonel Oliver North gave us their assessments on intelligence gathering in the Middle East. And we are hearing calls from current members of Congress that are concerning. For example, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Mike Rogers, Republican of Michigan, saying, quote, "This was not an intelligence failure. This was a policy failure." As you are in with us, Bridget, representing the Democratic Party, when you hear a Republican member of Congress say what is going on is a policy failure on the part of the president and his administration, what is your take on that? Bridget, can you hear me?
Oh, there you are. Sorry, I think you cut out for a moment.
Well, I don't know if you were able to hear the question that I had. Mike Rogers, Republican of Michigan, chairs the the House Intelligence Committee. He said that this was not an intelligence failure as much as it is a failure in policy. Do you agree?
I mean, I would say that no one wants us to feel like, as Americans, that we're not doing what we need to be doing in the Middle East. I think certainly it's an intelligence failure. I think that whether or not it's a policy failure will remain to be seen.
All right, so that's Bridget's take. Let's call in Daniel Scarpinato for the NRCC. Is there merit in what Congressman Rogers has to say?
I think there is merit, Congressman. I mean, when you look at the fact that when Barack Obama came into office, we actually had a stable and secure Iraq. And that's not me saying that. That's President Obama who said that. You can go to whitehouse.gov, and he gave a speech when he pulled out all our troops in December of 2011, saying that Iraq was stable and secure. And unfortunately, he squandered that. The military officials on the ground told this president that they needed more forces there. They needed troops to stay on the ground. He went against their advice. For goodness sake, this morning we have troops waking up in Italy and Germany and Japan. You think that we could have kept some in Iraq under the advice of our military officials? And you can read all about this. I mean, this isn't me saying this. The Atlantic, which is not exactly a conservative media outlet, reported extensively on the fact that the Obama administration didn't seem to have a strategy and squandered a lot of the progress that took place. And it's a real tragedy, I think, today.
Well, of course, Daniel, for purposes of shorthand, you have an R beside your name. And of course, Bridget has a D right there as the Democrat strategist. Here on set with us is Fred, who I guess can neither confirm or deny, although I see his lapel pin for the letters CIA. Now, we're going to get back to the political angle on this in just a second, Fred. Right. But it's worth revisiting what you and Ollie North had to tell us in the first hour here. Regardless of partisan politics, this is a very serious situation.
An extremely serious situation, and it is not an intelligence failure. We could see it coming right from the very beginning. We know who ISIS is. Their roots are in Al-Qaeda in Iraq. We've been following them for a long time. We know who the people are. We know what their plans and intentions are. The government just failed to act.
Well, the failure to act, it's interesting, Fred, because again, we come back to the sphere of politics. And back in the 2008 campaign, there was an ad as Democrats were vying for their presidential nomination, an ad about Hillary Clinton, about the phone ringing at 3 a.m. Who would you like to have answering that call? Hillary Clinton obviously came up short in 2008. There's talk she's going to run again in 2016. She's spoken out about foreign policy and intelligence. Let's listen to what that possible presidential candidate had to say.
Well, I believe, if they hadn't gone to war in Iraq, none of this would be happening. So I think
it wouldn't be happening in Syria. There wouldn't be.
Well, it might be happening
actors.
in Syria, but what happened in Syria wouldn't have happened in Iraq. Iraq would not have been, in effect, drastically altered as it has been. But Mr. Cheney has been incredibly adroit for the last 6 years or so, attacking the administration for not.
Well, that's okay. We'll get to Hillary in a second because, quite frankly, what former President Clinton, I apologize to you if we misidentified the audio, but you obviously saw that's former President Clinton. And there he is, Fred, putting the blame on Vice President Cheney. Now, that's not what you were involved in there, but this finger pointing, is this lost productivity as people are caught up in pointing, quote, who lost Iraq?
Look, they talk about this administration's policy, and I don't know what their foreign policy is. I don't think there is one. But I do know that this administration has made the wrong decision each and every time we've had a crisis. Go back to 2008, the beginning of the Arab Spring in Iraq. In Iran. Do you remember the little
Green Revolution
girl dying in the street with blood coming out of her head? And we decided not to help the Green Revolution. We decided not to go in there and fight and try to make regime change in Iran. Then you go over to Egypt, and we had a pretty good ally. He was our best Arab ally in the Middle East. He wasn't the best guy in the world, but we decided that we would overthrow him with no regard to who's going to take his place. Well, Arab Spring, this is wonderful. I don't think so. And then keep right on going along. We withdrew from Iraq, so Iraq is falling. Syria, the whole Middle East. Every single time this administration has made any kind of a move, it's been the wrong move.
That's Fred's assessment. Let's go to Bridget. Todd. Bridget, politically, former President Clinton is still very popular. Whatever goes on behind the scenes between former President Clinton and current President Obama, Mr. Clinton wants to shift the blame to Vice President Cheney. Is that an effective political strategy, Bridget?
I mean, I know you guys might not agree with me, but I do think that a lot of the American people, they have these questions. They need to have this understanding of who got us in this mess. And I don't think it's, you guys may disagree, but I don't think it's wrong to sort of remind folks why we're here. I don't think it was a good idea to be in Iraq. I don't think that we need to be involved in every military opportunity that comes up across the globe. I don't think it's a good idea that we're there, but we are there. And I think, there are things that our administration hasn't done perfectly. I'll be the first to agree with you there. But the point is that we're there and that we're, doing what we can, and it's not going to go smoothly. As I'm sure both of you understand, war doesn't always go smoothly. These things don't always go smoothly. But I think Clinton is right to remind us why we're here in the first place. And I completely agree.
Well, that's fine. Bridget, let's bring in Daniel Scarpinato from the NRCC. You might take a little different view of this, Daniel. We've got about 45 seconds. Go ahead.
Sure. Look, the fact is when does any of this become Barack Obama's fault? When does this actually become things that he is responsible for as president? And I think a lot of folks are just tired of him blaming the previous administration. The fact is, he himself said that Iraq was stable and secure. He said that in December of 2011. So you can't blame this on Dick Cheney. I think we can have a real debate, as we have for years now, for a decade, over whether or not we should have gone into Iraq. But the fact is, we did go in, and it is in America's best interest for al-Qaeda not to be running the country. And the fact that this president, President Obama, went against the advice of the military folks on the ground and chose not to follow their advice and leave troops there is what has us in this mess now.
And we'll have to leave it right there, Daniel. We thank you for your comments. Bridget, Todd, and Fred in studio. We're coming right back.